Welcome to the webcast. This is Paul Ragusa. I'm the editor of Security Systems News. Today's webcast, Security and Beyond, ONVIF Interoperability Standards Driving Integration. Now, today's webcast is brought to you by ONVIF. ONVIF is founded in 2008. It's a leading and well-recognized industry forum driving interoperability for IP-based physical security products. The organization has a global member base of established camera, video management system, and access control companies, and nearly 8,000 profile conformant products. With Profile S for streaming video, Profile G for recording and storage, Profile C for physical access control, Profile Q for improved out-of-the-box functionality, and the new Profile T release candidate for advanced streaming. ONVIF continues to work with its members to expand the number of IP interoperability solutions ONVIF conformant products can provide. All right, so we have an excellent panel today. Very excited. I'm going to, let's see here. Okay. We're just checking out one thing here before we start. Okay, so our first panelist is Bob Dolan. Bob Dolan is the Director of Technology for Security Solutions at Annixter. He brings with him over 29 years of sales, management, and technical experience in the physical security industry. After working with end users and integrators for many years, Bob earned his RCDD, Registered Communication Distribution Designer certification from BICSI, the Building Industry Consulting Standards International, in 2009, and his CPP, Certified Protection Professional, from ASIS in 2012. Bob is also an ONVIF Technical Services Committee member. Our next panelist is Vinay Ghule. Vinay is a product specialist at the Honeywell Building Technologies Security and Fire Solution Group. In his current role as a test architect, he is responsible for defining and executing test strategies and system integration test frameworks to enable the successful validation of Honeywell Security's cloud, SaaS, and IoT space product portfolio and solutions, i.e. access control system, intruder alarms, video surveillance, integration of logical and physical access control systems. Vinay is also an ONVIF Technical Services Committee member. Our next panelist is Jim Deering. Jim Deering is the lead analyst for electronic access control research at IHS Markit, and he also currently manages the analyst responsible for IHS Markit intrusion and physical access control research portfolios. He has a large amount of analytical experience coming from an economics and finance background, with previous experience as a private equity analyst specializing in commodity markets, risk management, and arbitrage trading. Jim holds an MSc Economics from the University of Warwick and a BA Economics from the University of Leicester. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Bob. Bob? Bob, you there?
Yes, thanks. Sorry. Today we're going to talk about the state of the access control market. We're going to go into some emergence of standards and where standards are moving to specifically in some of the physical security space. We're going to talk about the benefits of ONVIF and other standards, and then what's next and where we're going. So we're going to spend a little bit of time just touching on a variety of topics and going through different applications. It's not advancing for me.
Okay. If you click on the screen, it will advance for you.
There you go. So ONVIF's mission, ONVIF started, like we said before, in about 2008 and has grown very quickly. It's made up of almost 500 companies. They are in various positions of how they participate in ONVIF. The mission statement of ONVIF is to provide and promote open interfaces in the security industry to effective interoperability. And the long-term vision is that all security systems share a single interface. so that we can help users understand what's going on within their building from a security perspective. So we talked a little bit before already about the profiles that ONVIF has. There are 5 profiles that are active right now within ONVIF. Profile S has been about 5 years, and although it was not designed to be about H.264, the majority of the devices use that codec, but it was really about video and audio streaming, basic pan, tilt, zoom control and relay output, video configuration, and multicast. So Profile S has been there. As was stated, Profile T just moved into a release candidate phase. It was announced last week. It is likely to be released as a complete profile in either January or July of 2018. Manufacturers are busily designing devices and clients that will meet its specifications. They are testing at various events that ONVIF puts together. So we're seeing the movement to different technology already as new technology comes available to the manufacturers. Profile G was about edge storage.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Edge storage and retrieval. It was about configuring, requesting, and controlling the recording applications, and then receiving audio and metadata streaming. Profile Q, when Profile Q was started, a lot of the buzz in the industry was about plug and play for networking appliances. The idea for Profile Q was to get into the plug and watch. It was about easy setup of cameras and discovery and configuration and control of the conformant devices between the video management platform or recording device as well as the camera device. So Profile Q was about plug and watch.
Hey,
Profiles,
hey Bob.
Yeah.
It looks like there was an audio problem for the attendees to start. Do you mind starting over? It looks like
sure.
Everyone's back on now.
Sure.
So if you don't mind starting from the beginning.
Yep.
Sorry about everyone. We had a little audio problem in the beginning there. And you know what? Maybe let me start from the beginning again. I'll start. Okay.
Okay.
It sounds like some people weren't on when we started. All right, sorry about the audio problems, everybody. Let's start over again. Welcome to the webcast. This is Security and Beyond, ONVIF Interoperability Standards Driving Integration. And I would like to say that this webcast is brought to you by ONVIF. ONVIF, founded in 2008, is a leading and well-recognized industry forum driving interoperability for IP-based physical security products. The organization has a global member base of established camera, video management system, and access control companies and nearly 8,000 profile conformant products. With Profile S for streaming video, Profile G for recording and storage, Profile C for physical access control, Profile Q for improved out-of-the-box functionality, and the new Profile T release candidate for advanced streaming. ONVIF continues to work with its members to expand the number of IP interoperability solutions ONVIF conformant products can provide. Okay, so we have an excellent panel today. I'm going to introduce them. Our first panelist is Bob Dolan. Bob is the Director of Technologies for Security Solutions at Annixter. He brings with him over 29 years of sales, management, and technical experience in the physical security industry. After working with end users and integrators for many years, Bob earned his RCDD certification from BICSI in 2009 and his CPP from ASIS in 2012. Bob is also an ONVIF Technical Services Committee member. Our next panelist is Vinay Ghule. Vinay is a product specialist at the Honeywell Building Technologies Security and Fire Solutions Group. In his current role as a test architect, he is responsible for defining and executing test strategies and system integration test frameworks to enable the successful validation of Honeywell Security's cloud, SaaS, and IoT space product portfolio and solutions, i.e. access control system, intruder alarms, video surveillance, integration of logical and physical access control systems, etc. Vinay is also an ONVIF Technical Services Committee member. Our final panelist is Jim Deering. Jim is the lead analyst for electronic access control research at IHS Markit. He also currently manages the analyst responsible for IHS Markit intrusion and physical access control research portfolios. He has a large amount of analytical experience coming from an economics and finance background, with previous experience as a private equity analyst specializing in commodity markets, risk management, and arbitrage trading. Jim holds an MSc Economics from University of Warwick and a BA Economics from the University of Leicester. Okay, Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thanks. So today the outline is we're gonna do a little bit of discussion on where the access market has been, where we're seeing the movements to, and some of the emergence of the standards that are being developed to help the access control systems that are out there. We're going to talk about the benefits of ONVIF and all these standards as we go through, and what's beyond security, where are the systems moving to for building systems. So ONVIF's mission is to provide and promote open interfaces to the security industry for effective interoperability. Like we said, ONVIF was started in 2008, and it's made up of almost 500 companies around the globe. And the vision is that all security systems share one single interface. So the 5 major profiles that Annixter has today, they are based upon Profile S was the first profile that really focused on video streaming and looking at video and audio streaming, pan-tilt zoom control and relay outputs of devices, video configuration and multicast. And although it is not designed to be about H.264, the majority of the devices use that codec. Profile T was just released as a moved into a release candidate mode as of last week. It is likely to be released as a full profile in either January or July of 2018. Manufacturers are busily designing devices and clients that will meet its specifications. Profile G is for edge storage and retrieval, and we get into the questions of how do you configure and request and control recording applications. We talk about receiving audio and metadata streams. Profile Q came about about 5 years ago. There was a lot of buzz in the industry about plug and play for video or access control and other networking appliances. And the question came is why can't we do that with cameras? Why can't we have an easy setup? So it was about plug and watch for video applications, and it was Profile Q was set up for the discovery and configuration and control of the conformant devices in a very quick method. So Profile Q helps the integrators do some installation and move quickly on to the programming required. Profile C was ONVIF's first foray into access control-based IP systems. And it's really about the site information and configuration. It's about the event and alarm management. It's about door access control. So it was more about some of the mechanics of the access control. But Profile A is the one we're going to talk a little bit more about today. ONVIF performed several surveys and interviews and found that many requests came up for specifications on access control. We're going to address some of those with Profile A and some of the details of Profile A here in the next few slides. But Profile A really moves to more of the credential side of access control as opposed to the door and hardware side. In addition, there are connections that are available for other profiles that have been developed by ONVIF. Profile A went into a full release mode on July 3rd last week. There was a press release by ONVIF earlier this week, so we're moving now into full performance, and we're seeing a lot of manufacturers as the profile is being developed that are getting involved and already have devices prepared.
And Bob?
Yeah.
We have a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Someone asked, how many profiles does ONVIF have?
So you see right now you see the 5 that we just talked about, the Profile S and G, Profile Q, Profile C, and Profile A. Profile T is not a fully released, so I wouldn't include that at this point in time. But the 6 profiles are the key parts of what ONVIF has released at this time. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to move a little bit into the state of the access control market and go through some of the history of where we've been. We're seeing a migration, starting the migration process to network-based access control. Very similar to what we saw in the IP space the video space from analog to IP. If you look at the historical perspective of the state of the access control market, in the 80s, PCs came out, and during the 1990s, local area networks started to mature. Organizations started to identify various building systems that could take advantage of these networks at that time. The first major technology that truly migrated to the network was telephones. Voice over Internet protocol gave network architects the chance to learn how to handle quality of service issues and bandwidth associated with streaming data. That education allowed IT managers to become confident in their network performance and accept the ideas of higher streaming bandwidth that IP cameras added in the early 2000s. We're going to talk about some of these systems as we go through the next couple of slides. So now organizations are looking at the network to handle as many of the building systems as possible. We've gotten a new term. It's always been IT, or the IT department does different things. Now we're getting into the OT question, organizational technologies, and what does OT mean? And that's really the ability for organizations outside of the IT groups to really use the infrastructure that people have in place already to support all these systems that they use in common applications. So we're learning how to use that platform. And in the case of access control, systems are the systems for access control have been pushed onto the network for transmission of data between the different devices. The question about access control, though, is that the lifespans, the usable life of these systems is 10, 12, and 20 years. In IT terms, that is a very, very long time. The networks are used to 3 to 5 to 7 year turnover of devices. So when you run into as they run into the concept of access control and the fact that systems last that long, they're looking at how do they migrate their investment appropriately into the application that they're trying to achieve. So, by tying access control into the system, they're giving the ability to tie in other systems and get to that question of that smart building. So the idea of HVAC and the elevator control and all these other things, we've been hearing about that for 30 or so years, just about how things are growing, and we can create that intelligent building. As we get into this concept of the smart building and using the same infrastructure, now we're truly getting into the ability to make that smart building occur by tying systems together. Profile A is allowing us to add the access control to the openness of the systems and to the IoT concept. We are giving manufacturers and end users the ability to extract necessary data from the devices that have been in the past closed and proprietary. This data is giving the users that ability to better manage that smart building. Again, it's all about collecting data, and as we get into the terms, this IoT information, the Internet of Things, and using that information to provide more data and better applications throughout our systems, is allowing end users to make smarter moves in where they want to design and build their system in the future.
And Bob, there's another question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Someone's asking about given the complexity of access control technology, what makes Profile A significant in that regard?
So Profile A is really about the credentialing and understanding how the system works. Profile C was more about the control at the door level, but Profile A gets into the whole credentialing, and Vinay is going to speak a lot more in detail on what Profile A is providing and what some of the specific features are and we're going to talk about some use cases here in a few slides. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jim now to talk a little bit about the market.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Jim Deering here from IHS Markets. With these next few slides, we're just going to provide a little bit more of an overview of the general access control market in terms of sort of the market size and also some of the key trends affecting the industry. Basically, we sort of gather this data all year round, and we really like to share it. So without further ado, this is there we go. This is sort of the global market size for the access control industry. So what we do at IHS Market is we go and speak to the manufacturers of access control equipment and sort of ask them what's happening in their various verticals and geographic segments, and also collect data from them on their sales, unit shipments, and so forth. And then eventually we compile all this data together to get some market sizes for the various equipment types. So when you sum all of those together for all the different types of access control equipment and software, these are the market sizes that you see when segmented by the 3 key geographic regions. So as you can see here, the Americas region is the largest, but not by a long distance, and closely followed by APAC, which is also growing at a slightly faster rate as what we expect for the next 5 years. An important point to mention here is that we measure the market at the point where the manufacturer makes the sale. So, for example, any OEM or manufacturer selling a piece of equipment to another manufacturer that then rebrands that equipment would not be counted. This is simply, we try to avoid doing that, to avoid double counting anything. So we're simply looking at the point where a branded piece of equipment first enters the sales channel. So typically you think of someone, maybe ASSA ABLOY, selling ABLOY branded electronic locks to a distributor, for example. So that's sort of the first selection of numbers here. We're also sort of interested in the sort of key trends affecting the general access control market, and they can really be broken down into sort of 5 main areas. First is sort of the introduction of mobile credentials. These are sort of a very hot topic in the market at the moment. Suppliers are sort of continuing to refine their product lines and optimize their business models because many of them believe that this is going to really take off in the next sort of 5 years. Mobile credential downloads as of 2016 were very low in comparison to the sort of total number of credentials sold that year. However, we do predict that those downloads are going to increase roughly by around they're basically going to double on average each year for the next 5 years. So a compound average growth rate is expected of around 114.5% for the next 5 years. So huge growth expected in the number of mobile credentials used. This is obviously going to be, many manufacturers are sort of expecting to sell these mobile credentials in tandem with the original physical ones and just offer that additional functionality to a number of installations. The second trend is mobility. So this is sort of changing the way that access control is being deployed across for end users. So for example, maybe a security guard is now able to quickly transfer a video stream from his command console to his mobile phone and take it with him as he goes to check something out. The other really key sort of area within mobility is sort of the growing access control as a service business that's growing out of the mobility trend, especially in sort of the small medium business end user sort of segment where perhaps they would be trying to avoid, the capital-intensive cost of installing a full physical access control system, when perhaps they could just adopt convert that capital-intensive expenditure into a maintenance cost instead. The third trend there is cybersecurity. So this is obviously I'm going to talk about that second. I'm going to talk about that just after the fifth one. So just moving across to the increasing demand for system integration. This is something that we've seen a lot on the physical side for a number of years now, with the sort of growing demand for video surveillance, especially, to be integrated with access control, largely so that people can verify card swipes and then automate that process as well, so that it becomes much easier to verify a threat once the event has occurred, rather than someone having to manually look at timestamps and compare video stream footage against badge swipes. The other area that's sort of growing, especially in Asia, is the integration of intrusion systems within access control systems, largely to sort of add timestamping capability to protected zones within the building. Elevators is another good example of this integration. And then we have the other side of the integration with access control systems, which looks at the logical side, where people are, end users are integrating their identity management platforms with access control, with the hope of sort of leveraging the ability to automate the management of credentials. The last trend on this list is sort of the wider adoption of open standards, which is sort of being facilitated by that increased demand for a system integration to a certain degree. Obviously, as the number of enterprises with demand for integration, and also the size of the enterprises using access control systems grows, you would expect their demand for being able to integrate those separate access control systems to grow. And this is sort of coming back to the third point there of cybersecurity and encryption, and why this is becoming more important in the market. And what we're seeing is obviously more end users demanding sort of proof from manufacturers that the equipment they're installing is secure. With so I mean, we're seeing increased amounts of end users penetration testing the cybersecurity of the access control equipment, for example. The final sort of chart from this mini section is just our forecast for the access controller unit shipments for the next 5 years. So we split out the market for keypads, serial controllers, IP-enabled controllers, and edge-based controllers. So the sort of key takeaways of this chart here is that we're forecasting that in 2018 the serial controller market will finally enter decline in terms of global shipments. And what we're also seeing, and what we continue to see, is that IP-enabled controller unit shipment growth has outpaced all others for the next 5 years. Just to give you a number there, IP-enabled controllers will account for around 46% of access control unit shipments in 2021. That proportion is currently around 36%. So 36% of controllers shipped at the moment are IP enabled, and that's going to go up to 46% by 2021. Regionally, the Americas has been the strongest adopter of IP panels. Over 55% in 2016 alone were already IP. Whereas in EMEA we've seen stronger adoption of edge-based, and Asia is actually forecast the strongest growth of IP panels. Just a fun fact for you, Asia actually accounted for 60% of the world's global keypad controller unit shipments and 70% of serial controllers. And I believe the next slide is on to Vinay.
Actually, Jim, there's a question on that slide, if you don't mind.
Of course, go ahead.
Yeah, someone asked here, it says, what are some other things that we can infer from those findings on that slide?
I mean, the key takeaway from this graph here is that the trend towards IP-enabled equipment is only going to continue, and with that, the ability to offer, say, open standards, for example, becomes much simpler because integrating different types of physical security equipment becomes easier when you're running it all through an IP environment, rather than sort of trying to connect in analog or some other variation.
Okay, thank you. All right, Jim, are you turning it over to somebody?
Yeah, so it's now I believe it's on to Vinay.
Thanks, Jim. Hello, everyone. This is Vinay. I'm part of ONVIF's Access Technical Working Group. Today, we talk about the emergence of standard and overview about ONVIF's Profile A and Profile C functions and a few use cases associated with it. You know, in today's world, especially the IoT and the data world, the IT departments have been dealing with the convergence of several new technologies on the network infrastructure every day in and day out. Network systems, they provide the information and intelligence in form of data that can be contributed to the emerging model of predictive analytics. It's moving from reactive to proactive security model, and the video surveillance, physical access control systems are no longer discrete and isolated from the situation. Security, life safety, and facility monitoring systems, those were earlier in silos, isolated, are converging and started sharing data and information. This is where the standard becomes more relevant in today's world than ever before to make the sense out of this available data. And the true IoT is not possible without the standard, and especially the standard, those are not technical, but the one that talks about the procedures. ONVIF profiles are the major facilitator of interoperability between security systems. It can encompass much more than just video surveillance and challenges that we see in cyber. The threatscapes are different than the traditional PC world and the on-premises application that we used to be. It is primarily because of the unmanaged devices, the hunger of new technologies, those are coming, and the devices, those are bringing into the existing network. And customer and even the IoT vendors are also not a cyber mature in this space. What ONVIF is bringing onto the table is about the security. ONVIF has a dedicated and permanent work group that builds the profiles. It enables and encourages manufacturers to implement correct cyber security measures, policies, the client and devices.
Can you speak up a little bit? Vinay, just having a hard time hearing you. Just
quickly brief about ONVIF profiles, starting with the profile C. So, your background about what profile. The profile is basically described by the fixed set of functionalities and to the number of services that are specified by ONVIF. What it helps is it determines for the end user, the manufacturer or system integrators to determine the capabilities of the component product without having the extensive technical knowledge of specific version. Into Profile C, this was the first profile that was released to market in year 2013, and this predominantly focuses on collecting the information from the site about the configuration, the controller configuration, door configuration, how the event and alarm management has been configured to retrieve those events from the system, and door control commands, typically the lock, unlock door, block door, the double lock. The services, those are specified in this profile C. That's access control service, door control service, and the event handling service, which notifies the clients and or the information who, when, and probably when have granted access or denied access into the system. And when you come to the profile A and profile C, where is profile A, which is, as Bob mentioned, it just released in this earlier this week. This further expands and deepens the interoperability among the system with a broader feature set, emphasizing on the credential management, the credential configuration, the schedule configuration, and the access privileges and privilege rules. This enables basically to create, modify, delete the access profiles, get the information about the schedule, special day groups, about invoking, revoking the credentials, getting the information of anti-passbacks, resetting the anti-passback, and so on. So if you see predominantly the targeted users for profile C, you will find system integrators and security officers, whereas in comparison, and when you go to the profile A feature set or the capabilities that it offers, it covers more, apart from the monitoring, it covers the control part of it, wherein the security guard can take action to open the door or inside the door when there is an event such as a lost or stolen card that is found, or any particular door alarm that he has or the client has subscribed in his system. It receives the notification typically over his web client or mobile client or any PCM application, and security guard in the control room can take action.
And we have a question, if you don't mind, Vinay.
Sure.
Yeah, someone says, can you give us some examples of how Profile A can be used?
As I mentioned, the Profile A predominantly focuses on how the credentials are configured and how those are managed. Give a simple example about when you have to revoke the credential of a particular user or set of users upon the certain event that you received, you can do that and change the schedule, the way you operate or use different doors. You can extend the schedule for special cases. For example, the receptionist can end the door opening time for the person who is different enable of handicapped person. Put credential into the system and enroll them as a users. These are the key features that Profile A provides, and this is where when it combines with other ONVIF profiles, especially the profile S and C, we can achieve a much more interoperability apart from the basic event and alarm management. These are the cases that I talked about, wherein you have the ability to disable the credential, modify the time schedule of access point. Apart from that, some of the special features are that, such as the special day or holiday groups, which were not available earlier for the integration opportunities, and those that is where it is brought in here by the Profile A. Can you help me to move to the next slide? Other key features Profile A offers are configuration area about the occupancy control, the site, and area information, and the uses of input and output point for further integration cases. The elevator control is one of the good example that we can refer here, or the integration between the video management system or video verification system that can take decision based upon the state of the area. When I refer to the state of the area, it can be typically the number of people who are occupied in that area, the number of out people. So based upon the count of the person in that area, you can take certain decision, whether you can lock, unlock the door, send the notification, and further enable the integration between different security systems.
Okay, great. So are we handing it off to someone else now?
Yes, I believe it's on to my next slide, right?
Okay.
So yeah, these next couple slides are basically going to sort of quickly run through a bit of a summary on how open standards in general are expected to affect the wider access control market. So first we're going to run through some of the impacts of the sort of the effect on the market, and then maybe some of the barriers to wider adoption of open standards. So, I mean, the first sort of effect on the market that is expected and has been observed to a certain degree is the lowering of the cost of integration and increasing the total addressable market for suppliers of access control equipment. If suppliers can offer a fully integrated system at a lower price to end users that are demanding a greater degree of integrated security, then and if open standards can make this easier, then the supplier can do it cheaper, and therefore they can offer it to, they hopefully can offer it at a lower price to end users, which generally means that there are more end users willing to offer, to actually go out and purchase an integrated system, which should increase the total addressable market for sort of integrated access control and video surveillance, for example. The other effect is that with more suppliers taking on open standards and adopting them, is that more suppliers become proponents of integrated security systems. So in the past, maybe if they weren't part of an alliance or an open standard, then maybe they would not mention to their customers that it's possible to integrate, say, this security system with another security system. But if they then become a part of an open standard, even though they don't sell any video surveillance hardware themselves, they may start sort of mentioning to those end users that this can be done because it helps sell their own equipment. So there's an interest, there's sort of a self-interest for the suppliers that aren't even selling horizontal security equipment to help market that additional security equipment and integrated systems. There also is typically more likely to be higher competition between equipment brands and therefore lower prices. As more brands adopt open standards, a greater proportion of the install base becomes compatible with new equipment, essentially. For example, if I have a certain brand of access control equipment and I can only buy that brand, and now that brand adopts open standards and I can buy other brands, it does sort of allow a wider selection and therefore creates more competition between those suppliers, which typically also leads to lower pricing unless they can somehow differentiate themselves against each other still, which often they do through additional software or services. The other sort of effect on the market is that there is sort of a potential threat to larger manufacturers' grip on individual enterprise projects. So I'm not talking about your typical vendor lock here, where the end user is locked into buying replacement equipment. I'm talking about sort of as open standards become more popular, these end users are able to go out and pick their own favorite best-of-breed brands, and this sort of means that because these brands are able to integrate with each other and form a integrated system, those larger suppliers who are already offering fully integrated systems as their USP are now sort of have essentially lost that USP and now have to find other ways of differentiating their offering. So to summarize that, the open standards sort of allows smaller suppliers potentially to become more competitive in the market. And now on to sort of some of the barriers to wider adoption of open standards. So, I mean, obviously, like I just mentioned in that last bullet point, there are sort of supplier concerns about increased competition, and obviously proponents of open standards will always have to be wary of those in the industry that seek to or see them as a threat. The other barrier is sort of open standards all tend to lack the full advanced functionality of a single brand access control offering. So, for example, and this is sort of born out of the fact that these larger suppliers are now forced to differentiate themselves. So they're offering advanced functionalities like, for example, logical integration and automation of credential management. And typically through an open standard system at the moment, those advanced functionalities aren't available because they are always limited by the minimum requirements of a single system in that open standard environment, because they have to obviously work in tandem. Likewise with sort of integrating with other security equipment, the system is typically currently, although improvements are being made all the time, currently unable to sort of perform at the same level as a high-end single brand integrated solution. This is obviously particularly relevant in the larger installations where that high-level functionality is the key USP. The other two barriers, and the first is sort of security system end user, and I'm sure everyone on the call here has heard this before, but I mean, the security industry sometimes has a bit of a reputation for being slow to adopt new technology. If a system works as intended and has worked for 2 years, many end users are reluctant to change it unless they can see some sort of return on investment or advanced functionality, which also yields some sort of return on investment or cost saving. Additionally, the installers and distributors can sometimes be slower to change their ways. I mean, why change when I'm already making money, for example? The last sort of barrier is obviously a newer barrier, but very relevant, and the cybersecurity concerns of integrating multiple systems. For example, if one system has a vulnerability and that is exploited, then maybe all the others are also vulnerable, and integrating multiple systems does create more points of entry for those. So that's sort of a quick summary of some of the barriers. I guess I believe it's on to Vinay again for your next section.
Vinay, you there?
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
And if you could just move close to the mic, just because it's difficult hearing.
So thanks. Talk about the benefits of the standard that some of them, Jim and Bob have covered. And we've seen the standard, the flexibility that is bringing in for the system integrators, especially to build a seamless and interoperable solution about common functionalities using the product from different vendors. And ONVIF is helping to bridge the gap between legacy hardware and the new software. Both are conformant to the ONVIF profile. In fact, the IP interoperability opens up new opportunity and access to the projects and provides a valuable exposure for both products and the solution. When the developers community and the system integrators really work on the integrated solution, developer use the ONVIF interface on different vendors so that they can focus on developing innovative solutions as the interfaces are readily available, and they don't have to spend much of the time and efforts to build specific drivers to make the system talk to each other. And this enables the better market penetration for the manufacturers by providing devices with this standard IP interfaces which are proven, which are tested during the plug fest, which certifies another advantage of standard, in particular when we talk about the ONVIF the profile that we talked about, was the ease of installation that it provides, especially the ONVIF profile Q comes in handy here, wherein the capabilities to cover the devices and access points and other network points to configured for or interlock with the another system. The access devices, so it has been configured, can be hooked up, mapped to the video devices. But really, the plug and play nature of it reduces the time from hours into the minutes. Talk about the service service-oriented architecture, wherein that one which ONVIF offers, wherein you don't have to worry about how the system is going to be behave in the future, because once it is conformant and compatible to the ONVIF standard, the future compatibility is guaranteed, because you get the devices and profile. Those are tested by the different vendors. Contrast to the traditional system, wherein the central management applications and the system were pushing the configuration data to the devices during startup, and used to expect that this configuration data not changed by other clients. ONVIF specification provides new interoperability opportunities by separating configuration from control and monitoring. Instead, the client expect that all the information is stored on end devices, not on the controller on the system. And that can be changed by any other client or any other devices that talks or is compliant to the same profile. So this interdisciplinary interoperability is the key here, wherein integration of physical access control functionalities in the network video. Profile C, if you refer, can also be combined with Profile S for video and audio streaming. So user groups related to access and video devices sharing the same device management features and can achieve the interoperability cases. For example, the access control as a service or software as a service, wherein you subscribe for the other system events. And again, not restricted only for video. It can be any other device that is conformant to one of these profiles.
So this is Bob. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the standards and some of the other standards. So there's the IEC and CENELEC and ISO. They have adopted several portions of the several ONVIF standards. So Profile S has been into the Working Group 12 of TC79. There are some things that they've also incorporated into the CCTV on trains. So the collaboration of access control standards has also been, so there's Working Group 11 of the IEC standard that has encompassed or taken advantage of what the technical committees of ONVIF and some of the other applications that ONVIF is working on. They have the IEC is fully adopting that component of the ONVIF profile. There are memoranda of understanding from other groups, so everybody questions whether or not there are some competition between some of the standards committees. And we're going to talk a little bit about OSDP in a slide or two, but there are memoranda of understanding with PSIA, BICSI, and other groups. So we're seeing ONVIF is reaching out to adjacent groups that do standards in other applications that ONVIF works up to or coordinates with.
And Bob?
Yeah.
Just had a quick question from the audience.
Okay.
Someone's saying there's all these standards and they're all doing something different and not talking to each other. Is that the case?
ONVIF is actually reaching out to all the other standards that are adjacent to it. So we actively work with and have people from ONVIF being a part of the other committees or adjacent committees. So at the Security Standards Council that we see quite often meeting in the United States, they work with them. The IEC, we're actively addressing the TC79 committees. So within that, there is definitely an agreement with each other to make sure we know and run up right next to each other and help and integrate with each other. So we're each looking at different applications and different performance of systems.
Okay, great.
I think, Vinay, you were going to talk about OSDP?
Yeah, sure. Here we'll talk about the ONVIF and OSDP and the collaborative effort. Those have been put in by the standard committees from both of these organizations. Just to give introduction about OSDP, as is well known, it is Access Control Communication Standard. It was recently adopted by SIA in 2015, and it seeks to replace the industry's long-time vegan protocol. It basically addresses the security flaw that was associated with the vegan reader that used to give access to the hackers to directly the access point. Coming the introduction of OSDP, wherein we have the secure channel using AES 128 encryption, it is now unexposed to the outer world. And in this, the supervision protocol and use a two-wire communication panel can query the reader to know the health status and can take action when something goes wrong. So that's the key of the supervision of this protocol and the control that it has compared to the vegan. The key benefits coming out of OSDP are the panels and reader can be mix and match, future-proofing the projects and upgrade scenario as needed. Installations are much easier and simpler because it can be the multi-drop, saving a lot of time and money. OSDP uses just two wires compared to the traditional 10+ cables that typically vegan reader uses. OSDP is scalable, can be used beyond access control and support many more devices like sensors or alarm or of them. The point that I'm trying to make here is the ONVIF and SIA standard committees have been working towards standardizing interfaces for physical access control system and interoperability from last few years, and these have started getting a good traction. This is the Profile C and Profile A, foster the interoperability opportunities and the other network system. SIA's OSDP helps here to enable the interoperability between the peripheral devices. So it's been a quite complementary effort in the journey from two different angles. The ONVIF at the system level and the SIA for the peripheral devices. And with the CER's plan expansion to a network version using IP protocol, the two groups are formally recognizing the opportunity for collaboration and harmonization between their respective initiatives. So, very good effort and good news for the security industry.
Thanks, Vinay. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's beyond security. As we spoke earlier, the development of access control systems over time has forced those access control systems to be very proprietary and independent. A manufacturer could not rely on other products other manufacturers to perform in the necessary manner for the system to operate properly. So they built all the components and sold complete systems. This has been both good and bad for these companies. It's allowed them to capture market share, but also prevented them from easily taking advantage of other technologies as they came onto the market. With IP and open interfaces, companies can now advance their own systems quicker by letting outside manufacturers handle specialties that the access control manufacturer may not have expertise in. This, again, allowing them to use resources where it's appropriate, and I think Jim was talking about that in some of his barriers to entry. ONVIF has given companies that platform now to grow their business and provide quality solutions to the end users. The Profile A comes from major access control manufacturers, people like Honeywell, Assa Abloy, Siemens, Axis, Bosch. Others have been actively participating in the ONVIF committee to build these systems. There have been many manufacturers. Vinay referred to the Plug Fest. ONVIF sponsors twice a year the ability for manufacturers to get together and bring new products that they're working on to interoperate with other manufacturers and work on to help build the profile. So that's where we're seeing those manufacturers actively get involved to expand their portfolio. So I spoke earlier about the smart building, and as more of these building systems like access control move onto the network, we are developing new ways to manage these buildings. Many companies have integrated their access control with their video surveillance over the past few years. That has required the manufacturer of both the video management software package and the access control system to coordinate the necessary drivers and interface to allow that to occur. Profile A and the other ONVIF profiles are lead to the ability for open interface to move even deeper into the building. Imagine, if you will, that as you drive into a parking lot, optical character recognition identifies your license plate. Your HVAC system in your office starts to adjust to your preferred setting. We've all heard this scenario in the past, and we could do that, but it's going to take a lot of time and money to make it work. Well, now I'm going to challenge you to turn that scenario around to the end of the day. The access control system is going to show you leaving the exterior door. That's going to shut down any network ports that you used during the day and left open with the help of cybersecurity. The HVAC system is going to go into an energy saving mode. Lighting is going to adjust the areas that you just walked out of and forgot to turn off the lights. We spend 8 to 10 hours at our employment each day, but in many cases we consume that power 24 hours a day. By the use of these open interfaces like Profile A, we're giving other manufacturers the ability to take advantage of our knowledge and expertise of the personnel movement within the facility. So we're leading to better safety, better cost-effective usage of the components, and again, that smarter building, and as we get into the concept of the Internet of Things that we've referred to and everybody looks at, is how do we save, how does the end user save money to run and maintain the people within the facility. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim to finish up with the last slide.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, it's this really just builds on some of the things you've already mentioned, actually, with sort of integrating into other sort of areas outside of security. So I mean, there are sort of three main areas that are looking quite like strong prospects originally, and obviously we're sort of going to discuss how open standards is allowing access control to move outside of integrating with just physical security. So the first area, and this is sort of something that's really become popular in the last year and a half, really, but it's still growing phenomenally fast as well. And that is sort of the integration of logical and physical identity management. So the wider adoption of open standards essentially makes this easier because the access control system is larger for initially, but I mean, opening up the standards to identity management platforms allows those identity management companies to glean a lot of the access control data, which can be then used to really drive some huge cost efficiency. So what I mean by sort of the first thing is sort of unifying that identity. So a single identity can be used within an enterprise for multiple purposes and across multiple sites. So you can open the door with your office door and then log into your virtual workspace and purchase food in the cafeteria with a single credential, maybe that be physical or maybe on your mobile phone. The unifying the physical security credential with sort of corporate directory employee information allows the integrated system to perform very advanced functionality. For example, some corporate policy could potentially be automated and streamlined. So an employee requests access to another area, and the system automatically prompts via email the employee to check to see if they've received the relevant training to be allowed access to that area of the building, or to authorize other employees to access that area, for example. And another example is sort of spatial utilization analysis within a building. So the system collects data on which areas of the building are being used most and who also is using them, so that the system can then work out why it's being used. The data from the corporate directory then allows sort of security and property managers to make improvements to utilization. IHS Markit is actually forecasting that the number of access control systems that include some variation of logical integration is going to increase massively over the next 5 years. So essentially, in 5 years' time, 5 times more access control projects will include some form of logical integration, most likely identity management logical integration. The second area, which Bob mentioned just in his previous slide there, is sort of the building automation element of integration. So, I mean, like you mentioned, sort of heating and cooling a building can be linked to the presence of employees via access control data. But you can go even further than this, and you can go and say that the system is collecting data on peak usage for specific areas of the building, and the heating controls can be calibrated to accommodate that. So it's working out the true utilization of the building over a longer period of time, rather than just the here and now. The same sort of data management and utilization improvements can be applied to elevator controls as well. So lifts and elevators can automatically adapt to occupancy levels of different floors within the building, and lift placement when the lifts aren't being used can be adjusted for greater efficiency. Both of these will no doubt help end users to lower their overheads. The final sort of area that is obviously still sort of security, but at the same time it's a very different type, it's more safety, is integrating and making the standards so that they can integrate with fire and suppression and mass notification systems to allow them to become more effective, to adjust their response programming to levels of occupancy. And suppression equipment especially, and mass notification equipment, could therefore become much more effective with that data and even placement of that equipment could be potentially optimized via utilization data. However, the real efficiency with integrating sort of the fire and suppression equipment is coming from the potential saving on insurance. So if insurance providers can be convinced that the access control data it can be used to in their own risk analysis modeling to improve the likelihood of successful calculation of premiums, then therefore premiums could become lower, and maybe they could offer an incentive to access control or open standards providers to integrate to a greater level, or they could even incentivize the end users themselves to install additional systems. And I believe that is everything from me on this. I believe it's now we're sort of moving on to a Q&A session.
Yeah, we're running a little over, but we could. I have a couple of questions we can just go through real quick. This is for the entire panel. How much do you guys see equipment that states ONVIF compliant but doesn't actually meet the standard? We see it occasionally in the field, and then he says, does ONVIF committee have any recourse against those manufacturers?
This is Bob. I'll address some of that. As far as a recourse, first of all, on the ONVIF website, there is the ability to challenge a compliance to ONVIF, and it has to be answered by the manufacturer. ONVIF will monitor that and make sure that that occurs. And do we see it often? We have not seen many options. We've had that ability out on the website now for about a year and a half. With regards to the openness of ONVIF and keeping conformance, we are in general ONVIF is a self-declaration type organization. As far as the long-term capabilities of the ONVIF conformance process, the tool that the manufacturers have to go through is a software tool that every device goes through from a performance standpoint to get that conformance level. That tool is very difficult to defeat. So it's an automated process that you got to have the device running throughout the time for it to clip the declaration of conformance to be generated. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Okay, that concludes the webcast. Thank you, everyone, and this will be available. The presentation as well as the webcast will be available as soon as tomorrow. So everyone who is in attendance can get a copy of the presentation and the webcast. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Good job.
Cheers.
All right.